Well, hello, and welcome once again to the Far From Normal Radio Show. I am your host, Jay Moss, and as always, I have my brother over here, Mr. Bud Vino. Bud, how are you?
And yo, my brother from another mother, J Money Moss, April 9, 2019, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 7 o'clock Central. Jay, oh my goodness, not only do we have the president gracing us tonight, but first and foremost, maybe not foremost, but first, rev it up, Randy Davis. How you doing, brother? Happy Tuesday.
I've never been better, and I appreciate you asking. Folks, I'm the calm one. Keep that in. So, I don't ever have much to say about myself, so I'll introduce the man wearing the onesie, the hillbilly onesie, as he calls it. Neil Shelton, number 3.
Hello.
Awesome. So we got the whole gang in tonight. Great. Awesome stuff we're going to get into tonight. And I'm telling you, the story that we have to bring to you tonight is one that you probably would see on one of these big network programs with 2020 or somebody else on ABC, NBC, all of these network stations, because the first hour is going to rock you. I mean, really, really rock you. And then we're going to get into the second hour. We're going to talk about Neil Shelton's books again, which will really, really rock you, because some of the information in there is so great that we're bringing out for you. But we're going to get into our first hour here real quick here. And I'm going to bring in Mr. Patrick Dati here. So Patrick, if you could hit your camera and your microphone here. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Patrick, for being on. We greatly appreciate you, because I know that you got a lot going on. You got a busy schedule. So thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure my co-host would like to thank you as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Dati.
No, it's a pleasure, and you're very welcome. And, prior to coming on tonight, we talked about April being Child Abuse Prevention Month. So, I mean, you guys couldn't have chose a better time to do this.
Great. And I'm telling you, this story and what I've heard in the past, and I don't even know a lot of the times in some of these particular cases where to even begin. But I will tell you this: I think that your story needs to be out there, and I think it needs to be more forefront, more mainstream, and more center, because you, as a child, survived an attack from a serial killer, a man who is evil incarnate. And we're talking about the man John Wayne Gacy. If you don't know who John Wayne Gacy is, you really need to look that information up. It's on Wikipedia. The man dressed himself up as a clown, was a member of the JCs, was into all of this situation. And from my understanding, 26 or 28 bodies were found under the crawl space of his home. And you survived this. So you are not just a victim, you are a survivor. And survivors come out and they go out there and they help other people, and they uplift other people to become survivors in their situation as well. So, and Bud, did you want to say something as well? Go ahead.
I would quickly, before we get rolling, Mr. Dati, if I could. Thank you. First of all, as I said earlier, I commend you for your strength, because when these sort of things, again, these sort of serendipitous meetings, which I never think are a thing, they're all meant to meet when we do. And as you said, this being Child Abuse Prevention Month, the way it all came together, we're right where we're supposed to be. And you have two choices in life. When life hands you things, you either let them destroy you or let them build you up. And you're a prime example of building up and building yourself up. And then not only that, but empowering others. So I commend you again. Thank you for taking the time out. It's our honor, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Patrick, I'm going to go ahead and I know that you've spoken about your story in great detail. So I'm just going to open the floor up for you to tell us a lot about your story. And I think that's the best way to do this rather than us. We can ask you questions afterwards. I think opening the microphone up to you and letting you express your story out to us would be a great benefit to all of us, I believe.
Sure. Well, just to clarify, it was 33 young men that they found under Gacy's home. But here in Chicago, and I guess, if people are viewed into what goes on, if it gets into the national news, the Gacy story never ends here in Chicago because they believe there's still bodies that are buried in forest preserves within the community area that I grew up in, which is where Gacy lived. The reason my front book cover that's actually me on a path in one of the forest preserves that Gacy dropped bodies in the Des Plaines River. So the magnitude of what this man did was beyond just the poor young men that were buried under his home. It was the other people that subject his destructive and serial killer mentality.
Right. Now, how is it that I'm trying to review your story here, and I want to get into that a little bit because you and your brothers, from my understanding, were playing in a was it a strip mall? Is that correct, or a store in which this actually took place?
It's back in the 1970s. We didn't have strip malls. It was Goldblatt's department store, but it was very similar nationally to like a Sears department store or JCPenney's. That was kind of, I don't know if Goldblatt's was global, but it was a Chicago-based department store.
Yeah. So, and then the story that I hear is that you were playing hide and go seek, obviously with your brother and some other people, and then you go to hide in the restroom. Is that correct?
Well, actually, what had happened was it was a January winter day, and it was 1973. We were out having a snowball fight. My cousin lived just a block south of Goldblatt's department store. I grew up in a neighborhood called Belmont and Cragen in Chicago, and it's the northwest side of the city. And Goldblatt's at that time in the 1970s, that's where our mother shopped. I mean, they had a women's department, a men's department, appliances, very similar to like a Sears. But that particular day, my friends and I were having a snowball fight, and out at my cousin's house, we wanted to get out of the cold, and it was very common for us to go into Goldblatt's because on the first floor they had a huge candy department, which back in the 1970s they sold candy out of like these bins, and you can buy them by the pound or half pound, whatever. So we collected our change, we bought some candy, and we sat in a stairwell because it was a 2-level department store, and we ate our candy, and we were just wanting to get warm. And then it was a suggestion of my brother's that we, to not have to go back out in the cold, let's play hide and go seek, and we'll play here in the store. And they chose me to be the seeker, and they actually took off themselves. But it was during the time that I was looking for them, seeking them out, was when I had to use the restroom, which was on the second level of Goldblatt's department store. And that's where the incident occurred between myself and John Wayne Gacy.
Right. And so you go in to use the restroom, and the next thing you hear is the door lock.
Right. So I get up and put my jacket on, get out of the stall. I wash my hands. And then as I turned, he was standing in front of the door. This man, a very large man. And remember at that time, I was 9 years old. His intention, as I tell you the story, was to get me out of the store. He put his hand over my mouth. He held a knife next to my neck, and he said, "You're going to follow me out of the store, and you're going to do exactly what I tell you to do." And my initial instinct, it was in my head, like my mother said, stranger danger. And I just said, there is no possible way this man is going to get me out of the store, because there was no doubt in my mind that if he got me out of the store, it was not just to rape me, it was to kill me. And at that time, I had no idea who he was. I didn't know it was John Wayne Gacy. And when he was not able to get me out of the store, I was screaming, I was kicking. He then threw me to the floor, put his hand over my mouth, and put the knife next to my neck and said, "You're going to do exactly what I say." He ripped my pants off. He proceeded to rape me. When he was done, he held the knife next to my neck again, and he said, "If you ever say a word, I'll track you down. You and your family, I know where you live." And he dashed out of the store. At that point, my youth was taken away from me.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That's just absolutely awful for any child to experience what you've experienced, and to go through what you had to go through. And I can't say enough about how inspirational you are to all of those other people who have been affected by someone who has molested them or raped them, for them to come out too. It's not enough for all of us to say, "Hey, look, we hate that this happened to you," but we want to empower people out there, children out there, that if you see something, say something. In this movement, if you see something, say something. It has to be done and it has to come out. But go ahead, and I know you wanted to.
No, what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Dati, I want to say, again, I'll echo Jay's sentiments and say, I can't, we're so sorry that happened to you. I will say this. For 9 years old, your instinct served you very well. And that should be a lesson to people out there. You knew, even at that young age, you could not let him take you out of there. And that's something people need to hear too. If this happens or something like that happens, flip your lid like Mr. Dati did. Do not go into a car or get out of there with the person. So for 9 years old, to have that frame of mind, you're supposed to be here. There's a reason. And John Wayne Gacy, for people that don't know too, you can study him further. This man's entire life, he wasn't just a sociopath who had some semblance of normalcy. His entire life was the facade to victimize people. He was an egocentric. He thought he was smarter than most people, like many serial killers do. He was a piece of garbage. And you did what he probably didn't expect you to do. So I commend you for that. Again, I apologize that happened to you, but I'm so proud of you that at that age, not even double digits yet, you said no way, no way. And here you are. Thank you.
The thing that I say whenever I speak, and it really doesn't matter if I'm speaking about domestic violence or if I'm speaking about child abuse prevention or anti-bullying, I always say to my audience, 80 to 85% of men never come forward about their abuse out of shame and fear. And the reason I embed that into people's head is we are in a movement at this point right now in our judicial system, in our government, where it's the Me Too movement. And I think that is so wonderful. And I think I commend all the amazing women that are out there, and they're taking a stand finally, and that's awesome. But men are victims too, and it's not a competition. And that's what I try to educate audiences on when I speak, because, you know, I've spoken in a few domestic violence conferences where the panel were judges and attorneys in the domestic violence court and had no idea that I had been in an LGBT domestic violent relationship, and was chosen specifically by the Chicago Police Department to speak. And I spoke last. And every one of those people got up and spoke, and they talked about women being victims of abuse and rape and domestic violence, which, God, it's awful. They are. But no one pays attention to the men that are as well, especially in the gay community. It has got such a high population of male abuse, and it gets shoved under the carpet. And that's why I'm the voice that you are speaking to tonight. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing, because unfortunately, there's not enough men, straight, gay, whatever, that want to admit or feel comfortable, because I was one of those statistics. I lived in shame and fear because of this 9-year-old boy who was threatened by a man with a knife and said, "I'll track you down and kill you." That never left my mind, and still doesn't, even though he's already executed and dead, because I feel the pain of these young kids that are abducted and have gone through worse than what I have done.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and move on over here to Randy Davis and allow Randy to go ahead and comment here or make a question as well.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Patrick, for being here. I mean, I know this has to be tough, and in all honesty, I have thought for 2 weeks, because I knew about everything going to be on the show for 2 weeks, and in my mind, I was thinking, how am I going to relate to this man? How am I going to relate to this situation? Because unless you've literally lived in this situation or went through the horror that you did, either part of it, I mean, there's so many parts of it that I can't relate to at all. And hearing you just gives me chills there. So thank you for everything. But I've got a series of little questions here. First of all, the way that this happened to you, was this, or do you know if police or forensics or anybody, if that was a typical MO? Is that how he normally got his victims, or did he mix it up, or how did he normally get his victims?
He did mix it up. Okay, so the neighborhood I grew up in, there was a high school called Taft, which was a public high school, which I did not attend, but my best friend did. Gacy's home was literally 6 blocks from there. So many of the young men he would approach would be after school, and he owned a construction company / home remodeling, whatever. And he would recruit these young men saying, "Are you looking for a part-time job? I'm a contractor. You know, do you want to do a little part-time work?" He would get them back to his house for the interview, and that's usually when they were murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever happened.
Right, because I think from reading this, and a lot of John Wayne Gacy's information, he would go into pharmacies and talk to the owners of the pharmacies, and the young men would overhear, "Hey, look, I'm looking to hire 15, 16, 17-year-olds guys that are good doing these different things." He was, I think the name of his contracting company was PDM Contractors. And basically what he would do is, he was saying all these kids would overhear him talking to the owners of the shops saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm willing to pay these kids $5 an hour, which was a lot more back then than, you know, they were almost double what they could get minimum wage working at these other places. So that's where he would get them, and then he would have them come to his house for those interviews, and he would use everything that I've heard of was a makeshift tourniquet in which he would strangle them.
But usually he would start with chloroform, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Which surprised, well, it doesn't surprise me he didn't have it in the department store. But it's really interesting, since I came public with my story, there are other men that grew up in my neighborhood that told me that it wasn't particularly Gacy, but you have to remember back in the 1970s, if men wanted to do strange things, there wasn't the internet, so they would go to public bathrooms or forest preserves or whatever to do whatever they needed to do. And so Goblet's department store was no different than Sears or any others. Those things were going on not just with John Wayne Gacy, with other men in general, whether they be, you know, I've heard allegedly some of the Catholic priests in our community would localize there. So, I mean, and it's weird because now I get people that contact me on through my website and stuff, and they'll say, you know, when I was 13 years old, I was at Sears department store on Irving at Six Corners, and this man tried to get me out of the store. And then about a month later, I saw he was arrested and he had killed all these boys. So it wasn't like I just made up this story. It happened to other boys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's another. As to your knowledge, was there ever any other survivor of this guy other than yourself?
Yeah, there are. There's a few that I'm connected with through social media that do not want to come forward, but they have commended me for coming forward. But the sad thing is there are a lot of boys that their parents in the Chicago community, because as I actually last December of last year was the 40th anniversary of his arrest. So I was doing a lot of interviews at that time, but at that same time, I think the story was so much resonated back in the media here in Chicago that people started to reach out to me and say, you know what? I had some freaky things happen to me at Goblet's department store. I wonder if it was Gacy, you know, or this happened at Sears department store. I wonder if it was Gacy. So you never know.
Yeah, I think you never do. My thought here is that I think that probably if there are survivors that have already contacted you, some of them that don't want to come out, I think that there's probably even more. I really do. I generally believe that there are people who will never, ever admit that something like this happened to them. And that's why we want to do a show like this, is to say, hey, look, if you've gone through this and you've experienced this, you need to seek help. You need to seek guidance. And I think the only way a lot of people can recover for this is a lot of therapy. I really do. And sometimes maybe that therapy could be public speaking and coming out on it like Patrick has done. I commend him for doing that, because this is empowering a whole new generation out there that I think are experiencing some of these things. And you know, Patrick, you and I, we grew up in the Midwest. In the Midwest, normally in the 1970s, it felt like, before this, I'm sure, it felt like, hey, you could go outside at night, you could play, it was no big thing. Everybody did hide and go seek, and everything was great and fine, even in some of the Chicago neighborhoods, even though it was kind of rough. I mean, you could do that. But nowadays, you feel as if I can't have my child out in the front yard in its daylight, because if I don't keep an eye on them, anything could happen. Anything could happen. And I think that there's a whole new generation of young people that need to be encouraged that if something does happen, they need to seek help. They need to have that whole edge of stranger danger that you had. That, hey, look, I've got to say something here. I've got to yell. I've got to scream. I've got to do something. Otherwise, Patrick, you could have been another statistic. You could have been number 34 that was buried underneath that, unfortunately, underneath that man's house. Right. And, every time I thought about your story over the last few weeks and talking to you, that was my thought is, what if he wouldn't have said something or did something in that department store? He could have been the next one that was underneath that base or that house. And I commend you for doing that. Absolutely 100%. And the other aspect I want to get into as well is, I know that you told the story of coming home and what happened afterwards. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about that as well, because that whole thing really slightly rubbed me the wrong way on, your brother and you and the relationship there and what happened after you came home from the department store after that whole incident happened.
Right. Well, yeah, I want to share that, but I also want to mention that, being molested, being abused, I've been in therapy for over 20 years, and the second book I'm working on, ironically, was going to be titled "You Never Really Get Over It," because you really don't. You can have a lot of therapy, which is great, and I do it, on a weekly basis. But at the same time, my life was affected in so many different ways, and that's partly, to be honest with you, about 14 years ago, my psychiatrist that I had recommended I write a diary to therapeutically release what I had gone through. So I had no intentions of writing a book. I would not even be speaking to you right now, nor being a national public speaker. What had happened was I wrote the diary. My previous career had been in marketing and in publishing. And so I worked for a publishing company. One of my best friends was a writer. He was an older gentleman. He was retiring. And he was one of the people that I confided in as I came public with my story. And he asked to read my diary. And I did. And he said to me, about 2 weeks later, he goes, we got together and he said, "Oh my God, I'm going to turn this into a manuscript. We're going to get this book published and you're going to change people's lives." I said, "Bob, you are insane. You're nuts. No one's going to want to read this, and I'm not going to change anybody's lives." And I was totally wrong. And may his soul rest in peace. He's passed away, but he did help me write the book, and I dedicated a big part of the book to him and our relationship, because he was one of my mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted you to go ahead.
Right. Let me, I apologize. So
that's okay.
Basically, I had a very unusual childhood outside of even before being molested and the John Wayne Gacy aspect. My brother, who was the next oldest to me, I was the youngest, really resented me in many ways. I had developed a really bad case of bronchitis at that time. I might have been 2 years old, and was hospitalized. And, when I came back from the hospital, my mother daunted on me and paid a lot of attention. You have to remember, I came from this Irish Italian family, and, my mother made it very obvious that I was her favorite child. And so it came across to my brother. He saw it firsthand, and it disturbed him a lot. And with that, he would constantly, act out on me. He would beat me up for no reason at all. And so, and for my parents, my father's kind of mentality or reality to it was boys will be boys. And, but, after you get your head cracked open when you're 5 years old, your lip cracked open when you're 7 years old, concussion when you're 12, and every time I go to the ER and the doctor asks my father, what happened to your son? My father would say, boys will be boys. And we would come home from the hospital. My dad would beat the crap out of my brother. And then I would go to bed and my brother would put a pillow over my head and beat the shit up. I'm sorry, excuse me.
No, you're fine.
And so it was kind of like a routine. My brother got beat by my father, so my brother beat me,
Yeah, and I think that says a lot, because I mean, after this whole thing happens, you leave the store and you come home and you leave those, the kids that you were playing with at the store, and your brother comes home and finds you there. Obviously he's thinking, oh, dad's going to beat the crap out of me because you left the store and I didn't know where the heck you were at. And so your brother proceeds to harm you.
Beat me up until I was bleeding further. And basically his reasoning behind it was he was responsible for watching me and I didn't follow his rules, which were to let him know I was leaving the department store, although he didn't know I was molested. So,
right. Yeah. So, I mean, that adds more depth to the story, because when we're talking about these things, people, number one, if you are responsible for a child, you need to keep watch of that child at all times. If you can't see them in this day and age, if you can't see what's going on, anything can happen. And I think, I mean, not to harp on your brother badly, but I think that was probably the exact wrong thing to do, because honestly, you're really adding on to the abuse that already took place. And you got this child who was sexually abused. Then you come to find out later that sexual abuse took place in the bathroom by a serial killer who could have easily taken you from that store if you didn't throw the conniption in the fit that you threw. That man could have easily taken you from the store and you would have gone anyway. And then to have your brother beat up on you, that just adds even more to the abuse, I think. And it adds to the trust too. I'm sure the relationship is not great with you and your brother because of that.
Go ahead, bud. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Dati. I wanted to say, I like the approach you've taken. Number one, I agree with you. I think that's, when you're seeking therapy, I think that's a misconception. We seek to be healed, right? In terms of make it all go away. We want someone to give us those magic words to make us, feel better, to make the pain go away, to try and give us some answers. And where you really find the answers is within yourself, truly. And there comes a point where you say, okay, this isn't right what happened, but what am I going to do with it? Am I going to hang on to it and keep letting it affect my life in a negative way? Or am I going to take advantage of it and say, okay, not everybody could have lived through what I lived through. Not everybody could live through Mr. Dati, what you lived through, and flourish on top of it. Again, we're all here for a reason. So when you look at it from a different perspective, when your mindset changes, and you had a very good post, Mr. Dati, this morning, and I echoed it to my wife. It was very good. And you talked about true empathy comes when we start seeing things from other people's perspective, because we're all very selfish in that way. You talked about we see things through our own prisms, right? That was a very prophetic thing to say, and I think it speaks true to this, because you have to sometimes have that compassion, empathy, simply for yourself when you're going through this. And when you do that, and you can forgive yourself, and that doesn't mean that what happened to you as a victim is your fault, but letting certain things go and accepting what is and spinning it and helping others with it is key. As we say, and I believe this, if you're not helping others and you're not spreading love, you're wasting your time. So you have two choices when it comes down to it. Truly, are you going to be happy or miserable? And if you let somebody that victimized you continue to victimize you your whole life and live miserable, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to give them that power every day. Every day you take that power away by saying, you know what, Mr. Dati, I'm going to be vocal. I'm going to yell it to the world and see what sticks. See who can go, wow, I can relate to him. I can relate to him. I was going to end it all, but I can feel him. I don't know what it is, but I'm there with him. And that one ripple effect where you give somebody hope, and we'll give Deb Boyd. I always mispronounce her last name. Is it Boyota? I always mispronounce it. But Deb out there, we love Deb. She thanked a lot of people today, and we thank her. She's incredible. But that was something that I found that I had posted a while ago that was fitting for that. You know, that one glimmer of hope you can change the whole world. Somebody on the floor watching the show in tears from their phone that says, "Oh my God," because somewhere somebody has it worse. And you mentioned that. I'm glad you did. And if you can keep that perspective, no matter what I've been through, there's somebody who's had it worse, or there's somebody bigger and badder. There's always that perspective. And that's what it is, truly, is perspective and spinning it for yourself and for other people. So you can say to people like John Wayne Gacy, who's burning in hell right now, thankfully, I don't think so. You're not victimizing me anymore. And I'm going to empower people all around me, because we're going to stop people from being victimized in the future from this show. I guarantee it. There's going to be someone out there, a child, whoever it is, that says, oh, wait a minute, this is what I'm supposed to do in this situation. Patrick Dati told me. That's how it works. Thank you.
100%. And I'm going to go ahead and get on over here to Neil Shelton as well. Neil, I'm sure you got a few questions or statements there. Go.
My question would be, do you ever wish that you just wouldn't have said anything? Do you, I mean, and what of, you know, and what is your viewpoint of it now that you have? I mean, you know, do you think you'd been better off just keeping your mouth, closed?
No, I mean, by keeping quiet, I was enclosing all of the pain that I had developed from everything I had gone through, that it affected every relationship I had, including the dysfunctional family I come from. You know, so I think sometimes, you know, people, I guess, because this is what I do for a living now, is that I learn the statistics and I understand what really is going on till this day with children being abducted. I mean, in Chicago, in a large city like this, I mean, we have, you know, cases that happen daily. And that's why I'm doing the advocacy work that I'm doing. And I feel I think I waited too long for not saying anything. But again, you know, I grew up with this Italian Catholic Irish guilt that made me feel like I had to be exactly what my parents wanted me to be. My father was first generation from Italy, and he had very high expectations of me. And, you know, so that's kind of what I was up against.
Right. And not only that, I mean, Bud can give you the Italian aspect, obviously, and I can definitely give you the Irish aspect as well. I mean, from my background and my family.
I can give you the redneck expert.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, in the Midwest, if you are a man growing up, especially during the 70s, you are expected to be a heterosexual male that is out there making money and taking care of his family, and that is the way things are supposed to be.
And I did exactly that. I married twice. My first wife was my college sweetheart. She's my daughter's mother. No regrets. I have a beautiful 23-year-old daughter, just graduated from Illinois State there. And I'm very proud of her. But so many things, and I feel bad for them because of the effects of my abuse affected them. And I played a part in that, by writing the book and telling the story and being on here today, doing the work that I feel I need to do. They're not so proud of it. And rightfully so. That's their choices. But for me, even before the book came out, my advocacy work started in 2011. I mean, in 2011, after my story went public here in Chicago, I had no intentions of where this was going. And I was contacted by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and they said, we are selecting 6 trauma victim survivors for 2012. And you are one of them that we have chosen. We will fly you to DC. We want to interview. And that was the first coming out of my story, really. Before I left for DC, one of our newscasters, Larry Potash on WGN in Chicago, was the first one to catch my story before I left for DC. But after that, it just all snowballed in all those years of the guilt and shame I felt and the pain I still feel. It's awful and it sucks, but now God's allowing me to take all that crap that I lived with, and it all snowballed together, and now I'm able to affect other people's life. I have changed other people's lives, and I'm not saying that for my own aspect. It's people that have actually called me or written me and said, your story has impacted me, and I've decided not to kill myself. You don't know what that does for me.
Yep.
I mean, no 9-to-5 job is worth it to me anymore.
Well,
I can impact someone that way.
Yep.
Well, first of all, Jay, we say a lot, confidence often looks like arrogance to the insecure. So don't worry about bragging about things you've done. Those should be commended. Your lucidity in this is impressive, because I think that's important. Being aware of your own issues. Again, having that self-awareness, as you talked about your first marriage and things like that, and having the awareness. A lot of people don't get to that place where they can look within themselves. We like to blame a lot. And it's sometimes, as we say, it's not, that acknowledgement isn't always about blaming the other person. It's about saying, hey, you're a prime example too, and I've lived it. We've all lived it, I think, where if you don't live happy and you don't live according to your heart, I don't care how much you try and convince yourself, I'll be with this person and I'll be happy, or what. You've got to live and be true to you, because you can hide who you are or what your heart is driven toward for a little while, but not forever. And I encourage the people out there, do what makes you happy in the sense of going for it, being loud in terms of if you were abused. Don't worry about that sort of guilt. And Mr. Dati hit the nail on the head, because we have that at times. So a lot of it's from upbringing. We still have those flashes. My wife and I talk about, oh God, because of that guilt that's put on us. But when you have that awareness.
I will tell you this, there is a price to pay for it. And I have paid the price. I no longer have a relationship with my family. Right now, my daughter is not comfortable with what she's totally comfortable with my lifestyle choices. She's not very comfortable with me going public with my story. And
Right.
because it goes beyond the John Wayne Gacy, it goes with, my relationship with her mother, and then my second marriage, which was a total farce and should have never happened. But, I've always done the best I could as being a father. I provided beyond financially than I could possibly do as a father. Sure, I wish I would have been there more, but as a victim, I still suffer today.
Yeah, and I think you would have to suffer. I mean, just from the aspect of interpersonal relationships. I mean, what would that be like? I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who is, sexually abused, and knowing that in the back of their mind, they could have said, "Hey, look, I could have been this guy's next victim," of death. Not just being molested, but death. I mean. Yeah, and I think that's gotta affect your interpersonal relationships, because you can't trust the people around you.
If I could, Jay, real quick too, the one thing I've learned is not everybody's going to be on our timetable, and not everybody is going to come to ever accept what is. So we have to learn to let certain things go, which is hard, because it doesn't matter who you are. When you draw certain lines and set certain boundaries, people have that option to go and walk away. And that, again, not everybody is going to understand your journey, right? But that's okay. It's not their journey to understand. It's yours, right?
Exactly.
Let me step in, guys, because it's eating me up, and there's a couple things. First of all, Patrick, just doing the math, you and I are pretty much the same exact age. So I understand, and I'm sitting thinking, kind of putting myself in your place. You've aged better than I have. Yeah, evidently, living. It was on the farm, but saying that, there's a word that keeps coming out that you're saying, and it's shame. And I know that you're a national speaker, and that's amazing that you're doing this, by the way. Dati, I mean, I've paid to go see speakers, because getting that insight from someone who's lived it, done it, is an incredible thing. So I applaud that. When you're doing your speaking or in your book, is there something in there? Because for me, being from the same generation, I would have a tremendous amount of shame. And I know that in the advocacy that we do, whether somebody's wrongly accused, they automatically have shame. Whether you're a child that's been abused, you automatically have shame. In the country where I'm from, if you divorced, you automatically had shame. It's like shame is a constant occurring situation. It's like a dark cloud over somebody's head. And I've said it before, there was a movie, The Edge, and it had Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin in it. And Alec Baldwin was losing his mind in this movie. They crashed the plane in Neil Shelton's world in Alaska. And he, to break his train of thought, he asked him, why do people die in the woods when they're lost in the woods? And Baldwin said, I don't know. Why do they die when they're lost in the woods? And he said, they die of shame. And it's because shame is a powerful thing that will pull you down. So my question is, how did you have shame? And is this something that you address in your speaking engagements or your speeches whenever you are out as a speaker?
Definitely. I mean, pretty much everything I do on social media, when I'm speaking mainly more so to male audiences, it's talking about shame and fear, because that's something we do. And I think in women, it's the same thing. I was watching Dateline on cable the other day about the young women who had been raped at a specific university, and a lot of them lived in shame because all of these young men accused them, well, you were drunk and blah blah blah, and I have a 23-year-old daughter, and I just don't, that's not right. But my point is that yeah, we live with both shame and fear. You know, there's at least not 1 week that goes by that I don't have a nightmare of either my brother beating the crap out of me or John Wayne Gacy coming into an apartment door. There's no way he could be coming through because, you know, you have to get through 2 people at my building to get even past the door. But my point is that, you know, I totally speak about that because as men, you know, we feel like we're the stronger sex and that, you know, we're you know, the father, we need to be the strong one. And so when you're not being that, you feel shameful and you feel like you're letting people down.
Right. Exactly. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into this question here. What is it? And it's kind of a double question here because I think that there's 2 different aspects of this question. What is it that you would say to a child who right now maybe they're experiencing different issues, maybe they've been raped or sexually molested, and then what would you say as well to the parent who is not, say it's not the parent that's doing this? Okay, so they're the parent and they love their child and they don't know about this situation, but they just learned about this situation that's happened with their child. What would you say to the child and what would you say to the adult right now?
You know, when you're talking about child abuse, it's a little bit more touchy. I don't know necessarily, I never really talk to kids about child abuse. It's the audiences that I speak to are normally adults, either parents, teachers, educators in some format. So I think to answer your question the most accurately, it would be talking about bullying, anti-bullying. And I can tell you, you know, I've been in non-related work functions where it was a dinner party with some people that know who I am and what I speak about. And a mother came up to me. She is it's a Jewish family. And she came up to me and said, "Hey, I got a question for you and maybe you can help me out." I said, "Sure. What's the question?" And she said, "You know, my son, Tommy, you know, I think he's being bullied at school. You know, he's Jewish and he comes home and he said he's ashamed of this and that. And I don't know what to say. What do you think I should tell him?" And you know, to be honest with you, if you don't know what to say, then, you know, I understand you need to rely on experts, and by no means am I an expert. And that's the reason I speak. But I think parents need to educate themselves to a point, whether they choose to work with someone like myself or a counselor or whomever. But, you know, I think all of us grew up in that era in the 1970s, whether you grew up in, you know, Boise, Idaho, or you grew up in New York City, it doesn't really make a difference. We grew up in a time frame in the 1970s where, you know, you had the Brady Bunch on and the Partridge Family and everything was perfect and la, la, la. And back in those days, you know, my mother took it to her deathbed. She knew my brother was beating the shit out of me. She knew that something was wrong with me. She didn't know until I was an adult when I told her I was sexually abused, but she knew something was not right. I was a straight A student when I was in 3rd grade before Gacy raped me. And then I flunked the 3rd grade. I mean, you know, you're a parent. It's not that hard to figure out. But back in those days, my parents, and I'm not going to speak for you folks, my parents were more worried about what would our relatives think if the worst possible thing I can think about my son right now happened to him. What are our relatives going to think? And I'm sorry to say that, but that's the way it was in the 1970s. At least in the household I grew up
Hmm. I think it really was. I think, I do think there were a whole lot more television shows that were out there that were more educational and more family values, family oriented, value oriented, that help with morals and structure and things like that. But I think the family aspect back in the 1970s was more along the lines of like even worse today. I think it's more of keeping up with the Joneses. I really do, and it's all of what is the image that other people are going to think of me, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter what people think of you. It matters what you think of yourself. And I see so many people in this movement all the time who are going out there and they say, I don't even want to go to church anymore because I got a divorce. And if I go to, to the church, then people are going to think this of me. And that's not what happened at all. I've had guys say to me, I don't want to go to the church anymore because my ex divorced me. But the way the concept is, it must have been that I was cheating on her. And that's just a lot of bullcrap, honestly.
Yeah, it's true too, because they say, Jay, the people that are judging you are usually 10 times more fucked up than you are. Excuse my language, but remember, the people that you're on the couch worrying about are usually sitting on a couch worrying about somebody else.
Exactly.
Everybody has their issues. Again, embrace those, acknowledge them, fix them, and move on. But Jay, yeah, that Mr. Dati talked about guilt, and you did too. That's a huge driving thing. And again, you got to let a lot of that go, or it's going to eat you up, Jay.
And hey, guys, one thing I really want to, and I hope I'm not trying to segue in any other direction.
Go ahead.
I think another important issue we need to discuss, not just about what we're talking about now, but really what you folks do as a mission, from what I understand, from what I've learned about your organization, is right now, the suicide rate among men, divorced men specifically, who've had their children taken away from them, is at an all-time high.
Yes.
And it's an important issue, I think, and I'm not blaming it on our time that we're living in right now of our society, but it's sad because I'm part of a lot of fathers' rights activist groups throughout the country, and I get a lot of notes and information. And I just think that, I know we're talking about me, but I think we should talk about also.
I think this affects you, though.
Rates among men in general who either have been abused or they've been through a horrible divorce and had their children taken away from them. And it saddens me very much so. I'm 56 now, but 20 years ago when I separated from my first wife, it was the biggest nightmare that I could have ever lived. And to fight for my child the way I had to was just, I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, if I could, first of all, Jay, I think that's tremendously important. And I think it's easy, a lot of times, it boils down to, again, we go back to self-empowerment and self-love, but you can't, we a lot of us, and I've been guilty in the past too, we put our validation and who loves us, our validation in that relationship. That's our identity. So we lose that. And a lot of times as men, it's emasculating and we blame ourselves. And with the silver bullets that go flying a lot of times in family court, we know, and when those silver bullets hit and you start to believe them, that's when it all comes apart. And it's very easy to let happen. A lot of us have, myself included, years ago. And it boils down to that, knowing your worth. And again, it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship, a marriage, you still have to have your individual things that you do, your own, realizing your own self-worth. And relationships should be, again, I don't even believe that 50-50 stuff. They're 100-100. And you have
but I can't agree with you more. And I really am glad you bring that up. And let me tell you, my friend, you are a very strong person. I think that, for myself and most victims of abuse, men, women, whomever, I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I was addicted to over-the-counter drugs. I've attempted suicide 3 times. And what you're saying is know your self-worth, and believe me, brother, I would like to record that and listen to it all the time, because my self-worth feels like shit. And it's because it goes in spurts. I go out and I speak to this huge audience, and these people walk away and they're like, wow, this guy is amazing. He's gone through all this. But then I still come home behind these doors and, I have a nightmare of Gacy, and I have a nightmare of my brother putting a pillow over my head and beating the shit out of me. And for victims, even though I call myself a survivor, I will unfortunately always be a victim.
Mm-hmm. I think what you're really talking about on those things are some of the PTSD type symptoms, yeah. and I experience those a lot, and it's not with necessarily even just the family court system or going through that or legal abuse syndrome. I think it's more along the lines of things that you wish you would have done differently, or things you wish would have been done differently to you, or things you wish had never happened, but they keep coming up in your mind, and it drowns your self-worth. So a lot of the things that I do are things that Bud has encouraged me to do, is to look in the mirror all the time. If you're getting one of those visions in your mind, get up, go look in the mirror and say, damn it, you're worth it. You are worth it, and so are your kids. And what you're going through and experiencing, you were meant to experience it, because so that you can go through and empower other people and yourself.
Jay, and I commend you for saying that. And one of my favorite artists sings a song, "If I Could Turn Back Time." And lately, I've been saying to too many people, one including my daughter, one including an ex, is if I could turn back time and I can change the things that I did, I would. But at the same time, and by no means do I mean this as any excuse, is that part of all of my dysfunctionality, whether it be the drugs, the alcohol, the recovery, all of that, was due to the sexual abuse. It was due to the trauma I suffered as a kid. And I'm not using those as excuses. Those are facts. I've been mentally and clinically diagnosed with PTSD and with obsessive compulsive disorder, So,
yeah. And those things will do it to you. Yeah, go ahead, Bud.
Well, first of all, for 56, you look incredible, Mr. Dati. If I look as good as you do at 56, I'm in good shape. I would have never thought that. You brought up a good point too, because it's not a situation, folks, where all of a sudden you're just healed. You're healed. And the hardest thing, and I don't want to speak for you, Mr. Dati, but I know with the work that you do, and you mentioned it, because I know we've been there when you're doing public things like this, and people are like, wow, your strength, let's go home to yourself again. And then you feel like kind of a hypocrite because you haven't defeated some of your own problems. And then you start going, wow, who am I to give advice when I'm still dealing with things and people don't even totally see it? But see, that's the gift. That's the gift, is that it's an everyday process. And we go through, especially with what you're dealing with, I guarantee you have manic episodes of massive highs and then real lows. And it's hard. It's hard when you're dealing with that to even get out of bed. But we talk about the repetition. And just like it'll destroy you, it can build you up that, I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm a disgrace to my family, I'm a disgrace, I'm not a good father, I'm not a good friend, I'm not a good anything. That'll destroy you quickly. And it will bring you up just as quickly as if you say, I'm incredible, I'm worth it, I am the man, I am the woman, I'm the best father. Because you know what? Thoughts are things. We talk about thoughts are things. You keep doing that, and it's amazing what you'll manifest. It's amazing, but it's an everyday process. So people, stop a break if one day you're on top of the world and you seem like everything's coming your way, and then the next day there's all these shit balls and you can't. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you're learning every day. And the people that have gone through things, one last thing, Jay, everything that you've experienced, when it's already gone, you can't regret things. You can only learn from them. So you have to go and trust the process and know that everything that you've experienced has had to have happened to get you right here. Not that we wouldn't go back and turn back time if we could, but since we can't, I'm a badass. It's made me who I am, and I had to go through every bit of it to get right here, to speak to Mr. Dati. All that had to happen so we could connect. And Jay could speak. We could all speak together.
Oh, yeah.
Out there. It's a wonderful thing when you look at it from that perspective.
And I'll tell you, Neil Shelton, I'm going to tell you, this guy, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Neil, Patrick, before tonight, but Neil is the poster child for the silver bullet. And I will tell you this for a simple fact, the guy has been arrested, 3 times in one day, Neil? And 80 some odd times you have been arrested? 84 times been arrested, all over the whole same issue with the family court system. And I'll tell you, some of the most impressive things that I've ever seen or heard of have come out of Neil Shelton's mouth. And a lot of the inspiration and the calmness that I've learned how to have is because of Neil Shelton. And Neil.
And Neil, was that out of the divorce court system?
Yeah, well, mine started, with corruption but yes, divorce court. My wife's divorce attorney is my speaker pro tempore for the House of North Carolina. So it's just multi-layered, but there's a lot of corruption, a lot of collusion, lots of false allegations. So that's basically all it is false allegations. So
and I think number one, I think for Neil, the way that he holds and has such composure and calmness about him, even all of this stuff that's been done to him, I think it's a good learning tool and aspect. Neil, I know that some of the things that you do too, when you're experiencing PTSD, can obviously help Patrick. I think when we're seeing you driving through Alaska, those kind of things. If you ever
stress goes up, I go out.
Yeah. I mean, when his stress goes up, you'll see he's out there on the road and he'll just film the Alaskan frontier out there. And you'll see it. You'll see it all the time. But how can you, I think even in Chicago, I mean, some of the most beautiful things in the world are in Chicago. I mean, the Chicago skyline is just magnificent. Yeah.
Hey, look at the view behind Patrick. I've been watching that the whole show. I mean, it's just like, wow. Yeah.
And it's wonderful. And I think that kind of can take your breath away and your mind off of the stress, I think, a lot. And I think that the beauty around us, a lot of the times, if we get out and just breathe once in a while.
Yeah, I actually, you're going to think I'm nuts. And I do spend 2 hours in the gym a day, and then I walk 10 miles a day. Even when I'm speaking, whatever city I'm in, I usually, because it's a new city and I'm not familiar with it, I walk it. But in Chicago, I live in Uptown, and it's right on the lakefront. And people are like, aren't you afraid? Sometimes what I do is I start off in the morning and I'll go north, and then I'll get on the L train and I'll take it south, and then I'll walk for a while. And people are like, aren't you afraid to get shot or whatever? And I'm really not, because it's like, I guess when you give up an addiction, I've found a positive addiction, which mine is walking. And I walk now 10 miles a day. Part of it is in the gym when I work out in the morning, but the rest of it is during the day. And it therapeutically helps me tremendously.
Well, it's true too. You can't defeat a lot of times habits. You got to replace them with healthy habits, and that's a fact. So you've got to put that energy out there somewhere. So I encourage people to do what you're doing. And I also encourage people too. You have a good friend there. I believe you said his name was Bob, who said he was going to turn your writing into a manuscript. Surround yourself with people like that applaud when you succeed or see your greatness and tell you about it. Even if you see it and you don't want to admit it, surround yourself with people like that. We all were born with things that we're great at. We're just afraid sometimes to take that jump. And I encourage people, jump. What do you got? I've been in front of people more than one when I worked at the hospital that I saw one day and were dead 5 minutes later or died right in the room in front of me. Life is short. And I said to my wife, I will never be one of those guys, because I've seen it, who's panicking on my deathbed because of all these regrets. So you don't want to live like that. You got to let it all out for you, and let the chips fall where they may. At least when you go out, you're going out with a smile and you know you did it your way, not someone else's.
Yeah, 100%. And I know we were running low here on time here with you, but definitely wanted to invite you anytime that you'd like to be on the show in the future. We'd love to have you. We'll try and do as much as we can. I'm going to give you some time as well here so that you can plug the book and plug your websites and how people can get in contact with you, because I know that's ultimately important. If you have anti-bullying campaigns going on in your school, your town, anything like that, and you want to get a hold of Patrick, please do. I'm sure that he would be more than welcome to put you on his calendar for speaking engagements out there. Yeah, Patrick, go ahead and give a great plug for your book and the website out there.
Sure. My website is really easy. It's www.patrick, Patrick, Dati, Dati.com. My book is called I Am Me. When you go to my website, there's a specific page for my book. You can order my book right through my website. It will take you to Amazon, and then you can order the book on Amazon. The only thing I would really suggest that if any of the audience that purchases the book, if they would go back and do a review when they're done, because that helps my rating with the book. Also, my website is perfectly fine now, but I'm actually going into my marketing agency tomorrow because we're uploading my latest videos that I've done with the government and with the Chicago Police Department. And so there will be a video on anti-bullying, child abuse prevention, and domestic violence. There are, but they're more incorporated with some of my interviews. And I have a main interview that's on the Meet Patrick page that I highly recommend to any of your audience, because it's a 7-minute long video, but it kind of really tells my complete story in a nutshell. And my website, there's also a way you can connect to me through email and all my social media channels. But on Facebook, on patrickdati.com, and the same on Twitter. But you can go through those links on my website. And then there's also a page on my website for my speaking engagement. So if anybody's interested in trying to book me, it's a really good idea for them to fill that out, because right now, this month, I'm really busy because it's Child Abuse Prevention Month. October, I get filled up really big because it's Domestic Violence Month. So, and those are topics I'm really passionate about, in addition to anti-bullying, but that just passed.
Awesome. Great stuff. And also send it to me. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that it goes on the Future of Our Children's Video Network blog site. If you guys have not gone out there yet and like the page and follow the page, please do, because we will post all of our guests' information on that site here so that you can see it, easily accessible for everybody to go out there and connect with Patrick.
And just to add what I was saying, Jay, a lot of the folks that listened in today, and they kind of caught snippets. As I said, that video on the Meet Patrick page, it's 7 minutes long, and it really tells you the beginning to the end in just a short, concise story. So it's great if someone said, "Oh, I caught the end of the show, but I didn't catch the whole thing," and what is this Patrick Dati all about? It's really a good video that I usually use it when I am introduced, when I'm speaking in certain places. That do believe it, people don't know who John Wayne Gacy is. And so especially our younger generation, and it kind of explains who he is and how my life got involved with him.
Exactly, 100%. I wanted to thank you so much, and I'm sure that my co-host would love to thank you as well before we let you go.
Absolutely. I'll speak my piece and then go to Mr. Davis. I know he'll want to say his thank yous as well, and Mr. Shelton. First of all, your energy is definitely palpable. You've got an awesome energy about you, Mr. Dati. Keep doing your thing. Thank you so much for coming on. Again, your spirit is definitely there. You're put here for a reason. We're seeing it. And again, we're going to do nothing but support you. We want to see your progress. Everybody go on. We're going to put all Mr. Dati's information on as Jay said, Future About Children Radio Network, also Far From Normal. I'll have them on my main page, Parents United Worldwide. Go out and see this man, book this man, buy his books. He's a good man doing some good work. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Dati. And
thanks, bud.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Absolutely. I tell you what, Patrick, that's a heck of a thing. I mean, and I know why you're not afraid. Chicago is a crazy place. I mean, people get shot dead like every 5 minutes. But if you've survived a serial killer, it's kind of hard after that to worry about some of these other things. And I think you're very motivational, and I thank you. And on that point, everybody that comes onto the show, I always ask them if they'll do me a favor. And the favor is, I try to be as motivational as I can. And on that point, I always say I'm revved up. You know, it's like being juiced, jazzed, or whatever. So I get every one of the guests, Bo Duke, who was on the show, to say rev it up in a good motivational thing so we can put it together in a thing. So I'd like to ask if you wouldn't mind if you'll say rev it up.
Rev it up.
That's right. And I'll hand it over to Neil Hillbilly Shelton in his hillbilly onesie.
There you go. Thank you, Patrick, for coming on. It's a horrible story, but I applaud you telling it, and I applaud everything you've done. And you know, you're the voice for many people, and you paid the price. And I hope that you keep the strength and keep getting blessed as you go forward.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Patrick. I want to say this too, and I know that you're doing a lot of different things out there. The future of our video, or the future of our children's video network, is set up specifically because not only are we out there and we're advocating for good parents, but our real number one main function is to do it from the reverse, is to stand up, number one, for children's rights. The right for a child to have equal access to both parents, the right for a child to have a good, loving, fit environment to grow up in, and to not have the situations that have happened to you. And unfortunately, you did have to go through those, but I think going through those, you have experienced something that can help empower and hopefully save people's lives. And hopefully we've done that tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we'll let Patrick go here, and I'll definitely be in contact with you, Patrick, after this.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let's see here. We will go ahead and let Patrick go here. All right. So, wow.
I'd like to give everybody this was a great interview, and this was I really couldn't think of anything. But I know Neil is going to come up, because Neil too wrote a book. And what people don't know about Neil too, and they actually used it in the movie The Revenant. If you remember, there was a violation of Leonardo DiCaprio by a grizzly bear, and that actually happened to Neil while he was collecting moose poop pictures. And that was the inspiration for that scene.
I heard of it. This is kind of mythological already. This is one of those things we don't know. If it's
Neil videoed it, but the camera was laying in the snow, and all you just see is like a little snow and some poop, and Neil screaming.
Yeah, it looked like the camera was rolling all over the place.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that was an amazing interview for the first part there, and we're gonna talk quite a bit here about different things going on. One of them obviously is, and the way I'm seeing this is a trilogy of books coming out, Neil Shelton. I mean, you've got the new Twilight series coming out.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But Neil Shelton, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to speak about the books that are coming out. Obviously, I have read the first part of the first book, and it's amazing so far, man. It is.
It is, and I do feel a little snobbish in that way too, because we get first view on Mr. Sheldon's stories. So yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm impressed that either one of y'all can read. So
I think they're lying.
We make it look good.
Was there a picture in it?
I got the Pictionary one.
Jay, I pulled a Seinfeld when someone asked me to read something and says, "What do you think about it?" I said, "Well, why don't you tell me what you think, and then we'll go from there." That's the
Yeah. I can tell you for sure that I've read this, because I'll tell you, your father. There's a story about your father and when you got a speeding or a ticket, and that. I think that impressed me the most, because that's where your values and everything came from, in standing up to the law enforcement, even saying, "Hey, look, this can't be right. There's no way." Yeah. So you can see I've read this book.
Very good. I'm impressed.
He's proven it.
I'm proving it. But Neil, if you can give a good plug out there for the books that you've got coming out, I think. You've got, I think it was the Kindle version came out first.
Yeah,
and now and softback coming out, right?
Right there, they're not, and all of them's available right now on Amazon. It's Growing Up Mayberry, Just the Facts, Leverage. But you type in Growing Up Mayberry, it'll take you to it. But it's this is volume 1 that's available. Pre-order right now, but is 24th is when it actually releases. So anybody who does the e-books, you get it on the 24th. Anybody who orders the books, it comes after that, or it'll come right around that. So
Randy, if I always think of Neil's story, and Jay too, when we say, where people always, "Oh, you wouldn't believe my story. It's like the worst you've ever heard." I always think of Randy when someone says that to Randy. To Neil, hold my beer. You want to see bad? This is bad. And some of it, you won't be able to believe it, folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's all true, which is, and this is America. This is, go out. I implore you to purchase this. You'll be fun.
Absolutely. What's the price tag out there, Neil, for these people?
I think it's $9.99 on the ebook, and look on Amazon. I hadn't even looked. Be honest with you, I've been so busy. I'm turning out book 2 as well. It's going to be done actually before April 24th, which is when the official release of book 1 is, and then hopefully book Neil, 3 will be done.
Mm-hmm. And I know Neil has no ghostwriters. This is all from your pen, Neil.
Well, there again, now I'm using other than book 1, half of the book was written just to get me up to where they started, where everything started happening. After that, anything that I may be liable for, let's just say halfway through book 1 on out through the whole thing, I actually used their paperwork, the court's paperwork, the police's paperwork, their police reports, their transcripts, and actually let the paperwork tell the story. I may give a brief narrative, but I'm letting the same words and papers that they tried to use to destroy me to hopefully destroy them. So we'll see how it works. But
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic.
A lot of writing. Yeah, it was a lot of writing, and the book will show you a couple different things, but mainly it'll show you a lot about what Patrick was talking about, and what y'all had even mentioned is making lemonades out of lemons. So, but it shows you, the value of keeping your paperwork, of keeping everything together. Because if I didn't have what I had, I couldn't tell my story, because you can't tell my story because people don't believe it. My Fox News interview starts off with the Twilight Zone and then spins into the Andy Griffith Show. So That's why the books were important. And, you know, we've had people talking for years about doing different types of media with this story, and everybody, they need a Bible. We need this, that, and the other. Well, in the film industry, they call a Bible is actually the chain of events, and it's almost like a kind of a script, but not. And so I got to thinking, especially after I filed my last lawsuit, I've got enough here. I just need to put it together, separate it, do some narratives, and churn out some books. So the first three books ultimately will be the Bible for a Netflix or a Prime, but more than likely a Netflix miniseries.
Well,
And there you go.
I kind of like the Prime aspect because I like how Prime, if you guys are familiar, they'll put the little like bloopers or side notes at the very bottom.
Yeah.
So I want to find out some information behind the scenes, some bloopers that maybe no one else knows. So,
Yeah.
but Netflix,
Well, regardless who may regardless of if anybody even be interested or whatever, but that would be the first step. But yeah, I'm all for whoever's willing to pay me the most money for it, and I'm not all about the money, but at this point, they left me to where the only thing I had was my story and my paperwork. So, you know, I'm trying to get my life back. And, you know, and I'm not trying to get rich. I'm trying to get some justice. I'd love to see my children. And ultimately, and, you know, we've talked about this for years. If somebody ever were to make a little bit or get enough ahead to where they would be comfortable and start helping other people in the movement financially a little bit per se, if you could, it'd be nice to start a foundation. It'd be nice to grow something. It'd be nice to help people. But the whole books is basically just you know, me telling what happened to me. And I think that one thing that a lot of people's always piqued a lot of people's interest is the whole Mayberry thing. Because if you look at the Andy Griffith show, that the Andy Griffith show was justice, that was morals, that was at the end of each show, you learned a story, and everything was right, and everything was right in the world. And then this one is still Mayberry, but it shows you the exact opposite of it. I mean, it shows you stuff that you can't believe exists or happens, but it happens every day. So it's pretty interesting in that fact.
You know, I think it's a lot of how our childhood gets wrecked when we were sitting down there watching the Partridge Family, and then we realized that the mom from the Partridge Family was having affairs behind the scenes with some of the kids. It was strange, but it's crazy like that. But I mean, honestly, there's a lot of things behind the scenes in Neil's book, and I can tell you for a fact that will help you. Even the little things, the little details within that book, I think will help anyone out there. Again, like you said, the paperwork, keeping all your paperwork, keeping things in order, taking notes. If you get a phone call, record the phone calls, record everything that you're doing. It is ultimately important. Yeah.
Depending on the state you're in, if you
need. And it couldn't even be for necessarily writing a book. I'll tell you, Randy Davis right now will tell you the importance of keeping notes and keeping track and keeping your paperwork and keeping all that stuff, because that's how you win.
Yeah, and I don't care what state you're in, I would record the hell out of them, because you can record for your own purposes. Now, you're talking about writing a book or making it public, that's a different thing, but you know, put them on speaker and put something over there. But I'll just tell you guys this, and I've seen, you know, firsthand Neil's paperwork when we went to the lawsuit, and I have seen the 5 lawyers walk in with Sarah Stevens here. I have looked at, and the things that Neil has got in actual documentation, I sat in a hotel room looking at it, and you can, even with my case, you can look at certain things where you can make inference to, oh, they committed a fraud here. But in Neil's case, they committed the fraud and recorded the fraud and admitted to the fraud and confessed to the fraud in their own paperwork. When you get their paperwork saying they were committing fraud, that's powerful.
Well, I'll say this. I have done more than once. I've put a little disclaimer up to certain people that I knew. I'd say right away, hey, you mind if I record this? If they say no, then call me back when you're ready, because those who have nothing to hide, don't worry about it. So when you're ready, call me and I'll record it. Until then, we don't speak. You don't get the privilege. Click.
Yep. Every single one of my phone calls is recorded. Every single one.
Hey, Jay, it started off just because Jay likes to hear my voice. So to put him to sleep,
well,
ramble for hours.
I think it started off with, I think I got it. I don't know if I still have that. I may have to search for that for a second here.
Is that the one that I sent you that 3 a.m. message?
Yeah. Bud sends us a message. That was about a year and a half ago. Bud sends us a message at 3 a.m. He's excited. He's pumped. He's ready for the show, guys. We're ready for the show. Oh, wait a minute. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm ready. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, half out of it. What the heck? It's only, I'll just sit here and wait. And I always put people behind the scenes too, working for the show. We love the folks that work for the show. We got some great, the best staff out there. I mean, it's really in the group too. It's all empowering and we get excited together. We win together, and we hit road bumps together. We figure things out together, and that's how to do it, folks. In terms of a supporting cast, even when you have things, say you have an illness or other things going on, you know that your crew is taking care of business. And they welcome you back with open arms no matter what. There's a safety net. Be around a sort of crew like that. We've got the best, Jay.
Absolutely, 100%. And I will say this. I'm not going to say what type of an illness or anything like that there is, but Dana out there, Dana Lawhorn, she's got a lot of illness situation going on. I want you to keep her and your thoughts and prayers this weekend. What she's going through, and if we need to, we'll bring you more news on that. But other than that, we'll respect her privacy on those situations. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going out there that's good, solid stuff. Those books coming out, and those are huge. Randy's experienced quite a few situations come up where we've had the parents who have won the child back. And we've expressed those on Sunday night. One of them in which we had a woman that pretty much, or a couple that pretty much were being led astray and told to do something and almost kidnap a child from a hospital, in which we helped. Our group and Randy and Karen and some of the others out there who have helped and spent countless hours making sure that these things were done, and those people help themselves as well. And I'll tell you, some amazing victories that have come out of those things. But those victories, we don't necessarily claim those victories. The people who are going through those situations claim those victories. We're just happy to be a part of it.
On that too, guys, a couple things. During the little video showing the baby, and showing the aunt is saying expressly that others were telling her to do stupid things, and that if she had done them, believe me, there would be felony charges. What we suggested and helped her to achieve was perfectly legal. And during the broadcast, there's another lady on there, Sarah Hunter, who comes on, and she says, that's exactly what Randy had me to do. And because of that, I got my granddaughter out of the hospital 30 minutes before DSS got there, and the nurses told me. Now, that being said, we're not bringing home thousands and thousands of children like all these other people claim. Honestly, there's not time for that. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is, and I'm just going to blow Neil Shelton's horn here. If it were not for Neil Shelton, and this is the truth, during everything I was going through with Cheyenne, if it were not for Neil Shelton, I would not be here right now. I'm telling you, I would not be doing this. And Cheyenne Davis and I were driving through a drive-through at McDonald's on Ramsey, right on Bragg, right at Fort Bragg. And Neil called me and he had this idea. And I'm like, my God, do we do this? Do we not do this? And ever since then, I have not looked back. And Neil and I may not talk for months. But when we do, it's like we kept up with each other the entire time. He said as much on shows before. And many of us, Neil made a post today, and it was about Dominic and Shannon not being here. And I mean, they're not here because of the corruption and the lack of judicial accountability. in this whole scam of family court. Are we big enough to destroy it? I don't know. I don't know. But I can tell you this, if not us, then who? Who is? Who is going to do anything? Because we may not be big super powerhouses and doing movies every other week or doing anything else. But I can tell you what we are. We're honest about it. We're honorable about it. We live by code. We stand up against injustice, no matter whether it's in the movement or it's what the movement is supposed to be taking down. And that's the thing about warriors. And I just salute Neil Shelton. I know what all he's gone through. I know, and my heart hurts, and I say prayers for him every time I say prayers. So with that being said, I just want to thank everybody for everything they do, and to try and encourage everybody out there listening to know that you can't do everything by yourself, but if you're going to win, you've got to be your own boss. You've got to take the bull by the horns. You got to do what Patrick just said. He wrote a book. Neil wrote a book. You've got to do something to take back some charge on your own. And you need a little bit of support network. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that the future of our children's video network, and this started as the future of our children's radio network, and it's still in the helms there of Neil Shelton. He is the president, and what he says is what we do. And I know that his heart has always been on us encouraging and empowering other people that are going through this, but also standing for what's right, no matter what it costs us. And that's what we've done. And sometimes that's taking the bull by the horns and not being a popular thing to do. Sometimes where you have to stand and you have to take a stand. Sometimes that's not the popular thing to do, but we've had to do it because it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is never the easy thing to do. So I'll tell you, the future of our children's video network, we're going forward with this in such a positive way. I know that Randy's going to be working with some people for the UN coming up. And I'm telling you, we're coming up with more and more shows. We're reaching out to more and more actors, musicians, you name it. We're trying to bring people on. We're bringing people on from the movement, and you're going to hear a story next week from Donald Brenham that will absolutely jerk the tears from your eyes. I'm telling you, next week, you're going to get such a barn burner. I mean, I'm almost getting emotional about it already because it is crazy.
If I could, you are right. So I'll give people that much. Jay, this is actually a show, again, I spoke with Allison about this morning, and I said, this is not going to be an easy one. And I think this is one of the things I'm so honored that we're able to bring this to folks. It's, I think, something when we conceptualized the show, we didn't fully see this much in terms of the impact and these emotional stories. You're excited for certain things, and then the reality of certain things hit you. And this show is so important. And I know that the guests we're going to have on is so excited and empowered. And I am excited and empowered too. And as I said to my wife, it's going to be an emotional one, but a necessary one. These are the tough things that are hard sometimes to address, but they must be addressed. So these things do not happen in the future. I'm excited in a very respectful way.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, next week's show and this show will hopefully for sure tell you that we are 100% in this for the safety of the children and for the children's rights first. And that's what we do out here on the future of our children's video network is we stand for the children's rights first. Secondary is the parents' rights. We love you guys. We love you parents out there. We really do. but you are an adult. You can speak for yourself a lot of the times, and we empower you to speak for yourself, but the children out here need the voice. And so that's why we're coming out with the way we are with what we do. So I'm excited for the future. I know we've got a lot of other people that we've contacted. Possibly we could be hearing from Zena Crenshaw very, very shortly, which we're still hoping for that one. We've got quite a few other ones that are still in the works, but great stuff.
We got to give a shout out to Sly Stallone if you're watching.
Oh yeah.
Natasha Pavlovich. We'll give her a shout out.
Yeah.
We'll get
and
on here.
Yeah, and from a long time ago when we did an interview with Natasha Pavlovich, and I've kept up with Natasha and her case, and I've kept up with her, and we've become pretty good friends behind the scenes.
Great.
And she's an amazing person. She has been an actress out there in Hollywood. She's been on Seinfeld and Wings and all kinds of things. But she has very, very good contacts, and one of those contacts in the past, along with Neil Shelton having a contact out there, was Mr. Bo Duke himself. So that's how we were able to kind of pull some strings there and get a hold of some people. Those are the kind of things that we were building on here. Why do we bring Hollywood people on? Why do we bring some of these actors, musicians on? Because we're trying to reach those people where the press already is and bring them in, not where we're trying to create the press for ourselves and then reach out. We have to go where the press is and bring them to us. Sometimes that's how you have to do things. And then that's how we're trying to do this is we got to draw those names to us, have them actively be helped and supported through us, and then they can go back out and be the spokesperson they need to be for us. Okay?
Yeah.
We're out here trying to empower people.
Yeah,
but I'm going to...
James,
go ahead.
Quickly, it's about spreading that. I think there's certain people, even in Hollywood, that don't have a clue. And it's about getting that word out. And so the more that word can spread and people out there that are in the industry are visible, or it's easier for them to spread that message, to get that out there. So again, it takes all kinds. It takes all kinds coming together to make this work, and we're doing that, Jay.
John Schneider's quote was, I'm currently experiencing family court in 2 states, California and confusion. It don't get better than that. That's classic.
That is a classic line for sure. And I'm telling you out there, we pay for this most of the time. We pay for what we do out of our own pockets for the most part, let me tell you. But we do have a PayPal site out there. We'll release that again here very shortly. If you can contribute to that, that'd be great. The PayPal is directly linked to our Zoom broadcast, which gets paid for directly from that account. No money goes to anybody else out of that account. It goes directly to the Zoom, and that's it. Never gets touched. So if you'd like to contribute, we would be very, very thankful. And we do that through our production company, which is not necessarily a company, but we just put it together and titled this Normal Studio Productions on what we do behind the scenes. So all of the video aspects and stuff like that we do behind the scenes, not only myself, but there'll be some others that will be included in that very, very shortly that can help us out with that process. And one of those actually happens to be Randy's son soon, that will kind of be helping us and joining in some of those things, in those aspects. Yeah, so great stuff. Yeah, we got to put the kids to work,
Yeah. You give me some ideas now.
Yeah, there you go. We might have Mason tagging along here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, plus I'm going to start growing weed, which I think is profitable.
Randy is quite possible.
I'm not joking though. Seriously, not weed, but hemp. We're definitely looking into that, and there's a group of investors and North Carolina is making it so you can, I guess, so they can scam.
Now's the time to do it.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
Oil, everything, and as Croatan Indians need to be growing weed. I want to weed the people.
It's Alaska. It's legal in Alaska. They the state got $11 million in the last 6 months. $11 million generated.
So
Opioids are down.
Mhm.
Opioid deaths are down 40%, I believe is what the newspaper said.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is all from growing hemp and the CBD oils and the effects of CBD oils that can help. Now we don't necessarily come out here and tag CBD oil with children. We're not going to be doing that, but you know those are some of the things that we can do to help.
I am high right now. I just hit a bong right now.
Oh, great stuff. All right, so
Bud is red. Oh, Jay is red.
Oh, I'm like, whoa, okay, man.
Neil's probably
I'm feeling good.
Moonshine or something over there.
Yeah, no, get off that alcohol. No
Pass, give.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we're going to take it into the last part of our show, what we call the depressing part of the show. We're going to go on right with Mr. Bud Vino for shout outs, brother.
Well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Patrick Dati. First of all, Mr. Dati, thank you again for joining us, empowering, educational, enlightening. And as I believe Neil mentioned, we love seeing that aura behind you. We said before the show, that white aura, that's perfect. And he thought the sun would go down before, the show came up, but it seemed to hang on. There's probably a reason for that. It stayed illuminated behind him. So that's great. So Mr. Dati, thank you again to my brother from another mother, J Money Moss, Randy Davis, and Mr. President Neil Shelton. Thank you so much. For the last time, April 9, 2019, we're coming up on 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Everybody out there, chins up. It's not over till you say it's over, Jay. I haven't heard a bell, and I got to give one shout out, one last one, a few to my beautiful wife, Allison. I love you, baby. My two boys. You're my heart and soul. You're my breath. I love you guys so much. Everybody out there, keep rolling. It's not over till you say it's over, Jay. And I ain't heard no bell. Thank you.
No, you have not heard any bell, but you do get the cougar right there. All right. All right. So, Mr. Randy Davis, go ahead and take it away for shout outs, brother.
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to Neil Shelton and his books. I'm telling you right now, that's impressive, folks. Neil has filed lawsuits. He has stood against corruption. He's been jailed. The man sewed up his underwear with a staple and a string from a towel while in jail. You don't get any rougher than that. And then came out of it, wrote books, and done the things that he's doing, working on buses, working on cars, dragging them out of the woods. Buddies and next door neighbors to Marty Raines, who is, Homestead Rescue on Discovery. And it just makes me proud to know him. It just does, because he stays cool. He looks cool in his overalls. Nobody else can pull that off every day. So that's my shout out is to Mr. Neil Shelton today.
Awesome. So we got to give him the biggest the wolf tonight. All right.
Yes,
so
I like it.
All right, Mr. Neil Shelton, go ahead, brother.
Well, thank y'all for all the kind words. I appreciate it. Thank you for the brotherhood. Thank you for everything. And my shout out is to the one out there right now who thinks you're alone, who thinks it can't get any worse, who thinks you can't wake up another day. Take a deep breath, turn your pain into passion, your anger into action, and get out there and kick somebody's ass.
All right, that's what I'm saying.
Smoke weed. Smoke a lot of weed.
I think it's the rooster. You got to have the rooster when you got those bib overalls going on there.
Yeah.
All right. So I will say this here. There's a lot of things going behind the scenes, as we've kind of discussed a little with you about, because I mean there's a crap load more that we can't even discuss with you yet. Because we want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and aligned before we do that. We can't, I can't come to you, and we've learned our lessons with this. I can't come to you and I can't say, you know what, we're going to have John Schneider on next week, and then it takes me 2-3 months to get him on. I don't want to do that to you and give you false hopes here. But I'm saying that as I'm setting up there this other video.
Well,
but
we don't mind. We don't mind so much because we talk about how we just blame you anyway. So it really doesn't matter to the three of us. Yeah.
No, but I'll tell you, there are some big things in the works. But once we nail down dates on these, like we have Donald Brenham, we will definitely let you know those dates. And definitely next week, Donald Brenham, and that story will be on. And let me tell you something, you will be amazed to action.
Amazing.
Yes. And I'm telling you, that's what we need right now. We need his story going so completely viral that they actually do something for his daughter. And we'll explain more about that later. I don't want to get too far in depth in that. But if you follow Donald Brenham, if you have not followed Donald Brenham, go out there and make friends with him on Facebook. And you'll see all about his story and what we'll discuss next week. And I'm telling you, it will make you cry. I don't care how big you are, how bad you are, how tough you are. It will make you cry. Great stuff behind the scenes. As always, we thank our team behind the scenes, Maria at the helm of that, Melissa, Chris, Dana, MJ Rutledge, all the good people behind the scenes, Cheyenne. I can't name everybody. We got Yaya McLean, the black man behind the scenes.
White boy Neil.
And white boy Neil. And obviously, and soon to be Tessa Miller. Tessie Bear will be out there and helping us here very, very shortly. She is another victor out there. So I'm telling you.
Children, in his corner, Neil, me and Cheyenne, I'm telling you, 3 days to ending a four-year case with Tessie Bear Miller. And that was like one of our very first ones. But it happens, folks. Don't give up hope. You can win. I'm not going to say they're going to happen in a week like the kid this week or in 3 days like that. But I'm telling you, nobody can come out and say their case was destroyed or they went to jail or they got TPR because of anything any of us did. That's the truth.
Yep. And we are recruiting all of the time. So understand this when we see some things out there that we know that a person would be good for a particular role that we're looking for behind the scenes, either sharing the show or working on different aspects of the show or contacting certain people. We know that they're good at certain things. We want to give you the best opportunity for success if you're with our team. So if you are interested, definitely get in contact with Maria, and she will definitely let us know that, yes, you want to be a part of the future of our children's video network, and we will make that happen. Yep, go ahead, Bud.
Absolutely. Wow us to the people out there. Hey, I want to do that, or I want to do this, and make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Make it happen, because trust me, we're looking. Everything that goes on in the movement, like I told you before, a lot of people were like, oh no, he doesn't know everything of what's going on in the movement. Yeah, we do. Trust me. And it's not because we want to. Trust me. There are things that I know about a friend that I'd never want to know about Fran. It's just because people send that to us left and right. Randy, you can attest to that.
Yeah, and I want to say right now that no weed was smoked in the filming of this production. I was just kidding. Because I know it end up firing. I never smoking weed. Look,
no.
We weren't smoking weed. Well, I wasn't. It's legal in Alaska, but you know what I mean? But awesome. Yeah, look, there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff that I am done with all of it. He said, she said this about, I really don't care what she said or does or anything. It's out there. Look it up. You want to chase after her, go right ahead. You were warned. I'm done warning people. Now, I want to see us graduate to a new level where we're bringing better and better guests, doing the little videos we talked about with actual things in the network, and then people make up their own mind, because you can't force people to be smart. You can't. They're going to do it or they're not. And if they want to run after a rainbow over there, go right ahead.
Well, yeah, well, I'll have to tell you that joke about the leprechaun off the air. Anyway, that's one we can't broadcast. Anyway, awesome show tonight, guys. And as we always say each and every single week as we're signing off from the show, you are important, you are loved, and you are cared about. God bless and good night.
And rev it up.
Can you hear the wind that's howling through the concrete trees? Got you praying on your knees. In the face of danger we're all brave, till the gun goes bang, bang, bang. It's a cruel, cruel world, no mercy left, yeah, it's a cruel, cruel world. It'll break your heart and burn you down, down, down. Don't ever doubt that it's a cruel, cruel world. Oh, it's a cruel, cruel world. Smoke will turn your soul to black if you let it in. So close the door, confess your sins. Oh, when I was younger, it was all roses. Now they're dead and gone away. It's a cruel, cruel world, no mercy left, yeah, it's a cruel, cruel world. It'll break your heart and burn you down, down, down. Don't ever doubt that it's a cruel, cruel world. Oh, it's a cruel, cruel world. Oh, can you help me? Oh, can you help me out? Don't know who I can trust right now. Oh, can you help me? Oh, can you help me out? Oh, it's a cruel, cruel world. It's a cruel